Hi, I'm Donna Giroux, the Executive Director of CATV, and with me, we're going to do another episode of A Closer Look, and with me today is Paige. Your last name, Paige?
Heverly.
Heverly, that's a very exciting name, and I met Paige from, she was lecturing, she works vital communities in energy and transportation. But we're here with her because we're going to talk about potatoes. And I thought, how cool is that, that somebody who's involved in energy and transportation is also involved in local potato growing. So let's talk about that initiative.
Sure. So it's called Hartford Potato Fest, and it's a friendly intervillage competition in the town of Hartford that encourages people to start backyard potato patches.
Wait. We're all going to make vodka? No. Wait, so it's so it's the 5 villages of Hartford are literally, how are they competing? Like, is like the person with the biggest potato? What is the?
There's going to be a lot of prizes, culminating on September 14th at Lyman Point Park. We're going to have the actual potato festival, which will be a harvest festival. And the village with the most households involved will win the crown of Potato Fest. Yeah, Spud King or Spud
King and Queen.
And depending on participation, we might weight per capita or try to figure out a way to make it a little more fair. But right now, it's the first year we're doing this.
So if I grow a Yukon Gold versus the little red ones, weight might be a factor in winning.
Well, we're just trying to get as many households involved, and we're not going to give any preference for type of potato, or because there's farms in White River Junction. There's Sunrise Farm that would immediately mean that White River Junction would win. So
yeah, well, the professional growers it's just backyard gardens, right?
It is backyard gardens, but
cool.
But households. I mean, there's the community gardens in a couple of the villages, so we want to, as much as possible, just get more people growing their own food.
So Vital Communities is not spearheading this. Who's spearheading this?
This is spearheaded by Resilient Hartford, which is an arm of the town. It's kind of like an energy committee where we advise the select board on issues pertaining to resilience and hazard mitigation. So there's...
How cool are you guys? No,
yeah,
really.
we started 2014 and kind of the town trying to figure out how to avoid the disasters that happened after Irene. So it's
absolutely
wanting a couple more people than just the road foreman or the fire chief thinking about this stuff.
So we can all think about it by making sure we have at least potatoes in the garden come fall, and I guess they store really well over the winter, so it is a resilience tuber, I guess.
Yeah, yeah.
Do we consider it a vegetable? I guess tubers, I don't mean to be ignorant about, is a tuber a vegetable, you know?
Yes, so yeah, it's a part of a plant. It's like celery is a stem, but it's still a vegetable.
Cool. I needed that clarification. Sorry, everyone. You know, you take all this for granted.
Yeah.
And then someone says, no, a tomato's not a vegetable, and
it is.
Rocks your world. Is it a vegetable?
It is a vegetable.
See?
It's just the fruit of the plant.
Oh, interesting.
So.
Interesting. Oh, you'd be good trivia partner. Okay.
At least for this one category.
Yeah. So let me show this to the audience, maybe the two-shot. This is a little brochure that says Hartford Potato Fest, and it's a grower's guide, which I thought was really cool. I read it, and then I had to go on YouTube and see, how do you plant potatoes? Because last year I planted a tiny potato, because it happened to have an eye, here's my sample, in a little, just like a third grader, you plant it at the windowsill. And yet it managed to give me close to 10 little potatoes, which was a delight. So apparently the old potato dies and it proliferates. I was surprised. I thought I would get 2 potatoes from one, and instead I got this plethora of potatoes. So I just wanted to share my little potato story. So where can I get this little brochure about the Hartford Resiliency Potato Fest?
So the closest place to here, the Upper Valley Food Co-op has a display outside that has details about Potato Fest and then the growers' guides.
Cool.
And then all the libraries in Hartford also have a handful.
Probably Town Hall would probably have
Town
something
Hall
like
also
that.
has some, yeah.
But I noticed that depending on what village you're in, there's actually a village leader that you can contact for more information in case you're feeling uncomfortable about how to grow potatoes. And in White River Junction, there's Jack Spicer, and we'll put the email address I guess, under this show. And then Hartford Village, there's Bethany Fleshman. And in Wilder, there's Laura Simon. And in West Hartford and Queechee, there's Kyle Cochran. So
Kai.
these, did I say that?
Just Kai. Yeah.
Oh, Kai, I'm sorry. Yeah, my eyes just immediately assumed it was Kyle. Is that a Kai, a woman? Or
Yeah.
Sorry, Kai. So we'll provide that information, but you could probably even call the town, I'm sure. But and of course your sponsor is West Lebanon Feed and Supply.
Yeah,
That's cool.
They donated 750 pounds of potatoes to this effort. So the other incredible part of this is not only are we trying to encourage people to grow backyard potatoes, we're actually giving away seed potatoes.
So seed potato, it has the little eyes on it already.
Yep.
So or you know they'll grow.
Yep.
So you should pick up. So these leaders will provide you, or they'll tell you where to get your seed potatoes.
Exactly. So you can contact your village leaders to arrange a pickup of your seed potatoes, or anytime you can go to West Lebanon Feed and Supply and request your allotment of potatoes.
Do you have to like pre-sign up and
Nope.
say I need my taters, the seed potatoes, right?
Yeah. No, you
cool
can
is
just go to
that?
West Lebanon Feed and Supply. They have 3 different kinds of potatoes there, and we've been giving out 4 of each kind. So there's the red potatoes, there's white potatoes, and then there's russet. So
Ooh.
kind of all
Are they
different.
the bigger,
They're the bigger kind of
russers,
baked
like-
potato ones.
Which I'm hoping that you'll have at the Potato Fest, so we can slather it with all kinds of yummy things.
Yeah, and the festival is intended to be a kind of potluck of the harvest. So you come together, and we might have award for best baked potato, or best potato leek soup, or something like that.
I'm sorry, Paige, you're getting me hungry already.
It's around lunchtime.
Yeah, it is. Right now we're filming around at lunchtime. But I just love that it seems like a really friendly, fun way to get people to participate. And how will you know? I guess I've actually had a friend who grew potatoes and nothing grew. I don't know how you do that, because they're like one of the easiest things to grow. So, I mean, I think this is good soil to encourage potato growth, right? Is it too packed? I know it needs to be loose soil.
It really depends, and what we're hoping to do with the Grower's Guide is just to get good information out there so that people aren't frustrated. It's actually, as you said, really easy to grow potatoes as long as you know the couple things you need. You need to have kind of loose, well-drained soil. You can actually grow in containers as well. So if you don't have a backyard, you can use a 5-gallon bucket. You can use a burlap sack. We started giving those out last week.
And how would I, oh, now that you just put dirt in a burlap
You put
sack?
dirt in a burlap sack, about 6 inches of dirt. You can put 2 or 3 potatoes in there. And then as the potato plant grows, the leaves and things, you just kind of keep mulching around it with hay or with wood chips.
Right, because the old potato dies, and then new potatoes sort of grow outward around it, not deeper.
Yep.
So you just need to give enough space.
And keep building up as you go, because as that plant grows, there are more shoots that can come out with potatoes coming out of them.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
So you can get a bunch of potatoes out of it.
If you keep mounding, yeah.
Yeah. So how resilient? So we don't have to wait for the zombie apocalypse, and it's just another way to be resilient and to be able to see whether you can grow potatoes in the backyard.
Yeah, and the idea came from, we heard the statistic that something like 95% of potatoes in Russia are grown in people's backyards.
Really? Not the state isn't growing the potatoes?
No. Well, maybe too, but
right.
So we thought, wow, that's one way to think about it. Pete's Greens up in Craftsbury also has the slogan, Vermont can feed itself. This idea, it's kind of a challenge. So we thought, what better way to get people thinking about local food than giving them a vegetable that they already know. They know how to cook it, it's pretty easy to grow, and it's not very picky. So we're hopeful that we can get people's toes dipped in the pool of backyard gardening, and maybe the potato will be a gateway to growing other things.
I've heard it's a gateway.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. But how cool is that?
Spud.
Yeah, gateway spud. There's all kinds of spud jokes we can make.
Oh yeah.
We should probably close with a knock knock joke, but I don't have any on
I'll keep
a potato joke. Yeah, so if you could, we'll email each other potato jokes. So this is really a very cool festival. I can't wait to enjoy the harvest, so to speak. I'm disappointed I don't live in one of the 5 villages, so I'll just have to go plant my potatoes and eat them on my own. Is there anything else, though, you want to share? I know that by planting the potatoes and by locally growing, I know you're in charge of or working with energy and transportation, and that affects transportation as well because they're not being shipped in then. Right, so less pollution, local produce.
Yeah, and the idea also being we're trying to build what's called a food shed. It's kind of like a watershed, but food specific, that if there are disruptions to transport networks or the price of gas gets really high, that those costs aren't passed on to Hartford residents for what they're paying for their food. So the more we can be producing closer to us, the less vulnerable we'll be to those kind of outside changes that really we're not doing anything to create those changes, but will still be affected by them, and to be more resilient as different parts of the country are affected by disasters, or we're seeing changes happening in California. Nebraska just had mudslides and things like that. So those kind of traditional breadbaskets of our country may not always be able to provide the same level of production as they do now. So starting to look more locally at how we can start to fill in.
That's a great point.
Sooner, yeah.
Absolutely, especially with global warming creating volatile weather. I mean, it doesn't mean it wouldn't wipe out our potato harvests, but there's other like gas prices that it would, we have no impact on being able to change that. So what other vegetable do you think we could, okay, now that we're going to master the potato, are we going to the string bean next? What do you think?
I think the best thing to go to is the thing that you'll eat.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Because another big piece of this is thinking about like food waste. And the reason we chose potatoes, because everyone loves potatoes.
It's true.
We're not going to go with something like kohlrabi or bok choy that people don't really, they might know what it is now, but maybe they don't know how to cook it. I'm guilty of that myself. I'm like, okay, I have this. What do I do with it?
What do I do with it? Yeah.
Everyone knows what to do with potatoes. So I think tomatoes are another great thing to grow in your backyard, because even if you're not exactly sure how to get the most production out of a plant, often you will get growth.
A good harvest.
And there's nothing like going in your backyard and picking a potato or a tomato right off the plant and
I have
eating
mine growing in the house, waiting for. They looked a little sad because today it had snowed, but I love to take the seeds from heirloom tomatoes and then try to grow them the next year and just keep growing them again and again, and it's like eureka, success.
Yeah. I do that too.
Yeah, it's a cool thing. So I guess, is there any other, anything else about the resiliency? Is it considered a committee or is it considered a commission?
Resilient Hartford is the name, and we're a town committee.
And if anyone wants to either come to your meetings or participate, how would they be able to do that? Is there some contact on the town website?
Yeah. So our website is a bunch of numbers, but it's not a coherent website.
Well, if you share it with us, maybe we can add that to the show.
Sure. Matt Osborne is the town staffer who comes and kind of holds the space for us, but we meet every fourth Wednesday of the month. So we'll be meeting on May 22nd, I believe, is our next meeting next week. And we meet at 5 o'clock at Hartford Town Hall. And it also goes out in the postings of the room assignments that the town sends out in the listservs, and it's on the town website and things like that.
And anyone from the community is welcome.
Yep. They're open meetings, free open meetings.
And do you go through different categories of resiliency and sort of, or do you just hyper-focus on a couple of things each season?
It depends. So in the past, we've done Resilience Week. We did 2 of those, I believe, in 2016 and 2017. And that was around the anniversary of Irene, and wanting people to kind of keep that in mind, that it could happen again.
Using scare tactics.
No,
but I mean,
celebration
it's an
tactics.
educational, the Resilience Week is an educational.
Yes, and it's learning things like backyard gardening, it's composting, other kind of like knife sharpening, just kind of sort of homesteading skills.
Ooh, that's really cool. Knife
and
sharpening.
that's what we did a couple years back, and then we transitioned more to a monthly workshop series. So we have an event every month with a speaker, either from our community or outside, that is really interesting, that we'd like to bring into Hartford and have. Usually we're at the Bugby Senior Center for those in our next.
Are they still homesteading style in workshops? Is that?
Some of them are. I mean, this year we had in September around harvest time, we had a food preservation workshop. We also just recently had one in the end of April around the 1938 hurricane that came through New England. And so that was a similar scale as Irene, but it had wind, and it pretty much blew down. I think the statistic is those 2-by logger trucks that are filled with the tree trunks. That the amount of wood that was blown down in that hurricane could go from here to Seattle and back again.
Oh my goodness! Can you imagine?
We saw some incredible pictures.
Just to be able to clear roads so you couldn't get food shipped in if you wanted to.
Yep,
right? And like what we're seeing a lot recently, that a lot of the roads are along the waterways, so you get this erosion, and all of a sudden, you know, I drive Route 4 every day, and I'm like, that's getting a little too.
Yeah,
it's getting a little too big.
Yeah.
So a little worrisome, because sometimes there's not an easy path if that road is not available. So
we're just trying to get people to think about this beyond 1 or 2 topics that they may be interested in, but start connecting some of those dots to things that have happened, things that are currently happening, and start to get people more prepared for thinking about just what would it be like if you didn't have electricity for a day or for a week.
And are there locations in Hartford, I imagine some Hartford residents know, where if there's a terrible situation, you go to the high school or go to do you have shelters?
Yeah, the high school is the big one, and actually the high school opened up as a shelter for some surrounding communities this past November, when we had that ice storm that knocked down a bunch of trees that stilled leaves into power lines, and people were without electricity and water for quite some time. So this is we're seeing it happen in practice now.
Absolutely. When we first moved here, we bought an ever so expensive generator, but it's been great, because we've had outages in the last few years. Yeah. And so initially I was, shaking my fist at my husband, and now I'm like, thank you, darling.
Forethought.
Yeah, exactly. Forethought is a good thing. Yeah.
And I think that gets to something else that we're trying to build with Potato Fest, is the idea that in the event of a disaster or a disruption, it's not the state that's going to be there first, or it's not the FEMA that's going to be helping out. It's your neighbors. So
Absolutely.
We want people to know their neighbors. We're kind of in this period of time where you're not relying on your neighbors like maybe our communities did 50 years ago. Everyone has their own generator, everyone has their own car, and But when the grid goes down, what do? You have to turn and look at each other and say, oh, there's a widow who lives up the hill from me. I bet she might need some help. And starting to figure out ways like this festival, Potato Fest, that we can reintegrate our societies and our communities and know our neighbors.
It's for resiliency's sake, we should enjoy each other and party together.
Exactly.
Have a fest.
Exactly.
No, really, I imagine it's the old potluck, and churches serve that as well.
Yeah.
You know, besides the spirituality. That's very cool.
So we're trying to build that kind of social cohesion through these, and there's similar efforts happening around. Heartland is reviving their community breakfasts, which are the first Saturday of the month, and that's headed up by a resilience group down there. So this idea that food builds community is spreading.
Absolutely. I am so glad you came to share potatoes. It's just such an important thing. And I saw this amazing picture, which I hope we could get a copy of you wearing sort of a potato.
We have a potato cutout. I should have brought it today. It says Hartford Potato Fest, and it's a potato, and you can get your picture taken with your face in the hole.
With your tater. So tater tots, taters. No.
Yeah.
So I think that's super. So I'm sure we'll see that at the fest. And what day is the fest again?
The fest will be Saturday, September 14th at Lyman Fort Park.
And if you haven't dug up your potatoes by then, it's actually telling us when the harvest is. It's the end of August into mid-September.
Yep.
So at least here in Vermont, New Hampshire area.
Zone 4.
Yeah, Zone 4, is that what it is? Okay, thank you, Paige.
Yeah,
I really appreciate you coming on.
Thanks.
And so if you'd like to be a host or a guest on A Closer Look, we'd love to have you as both those things. So enjoy your week. Bye. Thanks.
Thanks.